The great thing about a jacketed unitank like this one is their ability to efficiently maintain fermentation temperatures. Plus, since it's a unitank, it can hold a significant amount of pressure, allowing you to ferment, condition, and carbonate all in the same tank. The only downside is this thing will set you back over $1,800. But there's a new tank on the market with all the same benefits as a traditional jacketed unitank and a price tag of roughly $500. Let's take a look. This is the Brewtools MiniUni Plus, and as you can see, it's designed to be incredibly flexible. You can start out with a simple bare bones configuration and slowly add accessories over time to craft the perfect unitank to meet your specific needs. In this video, I'm going to get this thing installed in my new shed brewery. I'll show you the accessories I'm using to customize it for my needs, and I'll give you my first impressions. Just recently, I brewed the first beer in the new space, and the intention was to figure out what's working well and what can be improved. One thing I learned is I need to get my sparge water heater moved to the other side of my kettle, and that opens a perfect spot to install the new MiniUni Plus. This tank ships with a nice stand for the fermenter, and it also ships with a very interesting wall mounting plate. From what I've seen, if you really want to take full advantage of the 2-inch port on the bottom of the unitank, wall mounting is the way to go. Now, obviously, there's going to be a considerable amount of weight hanging here, so please be smart and do this at your own risk. After hanging the mounting plate, the next step is to install what I'm calling the bump guard. This not only protects the finish of the tank, but it also pushes the tank away from the wall so it hangs plumb. And just like that, the tank is installed. Now, let's talk about accessories. On the top of the tank, there's a 4-inch tri-clamp port, and the simplest way to go for this one is to use the included airlock setup. It's a 4-inch to 34mm plate with a silicone airlock holder and a 3-piece airlock. A great improvement to this setup is to swap the 4-inch tri-clamp for the 4-inch tri-clamp handle, which makes it much easier to move your tank around the brewery. The next option to consider is the MiniUni pressure kit, which comes with everything you need to start pressure fermenting in your unitank. There's a pressure gauge, spunding valve, pressure release valve, gas in ball lock, and liquid out ball lock, complete with a floating dip tube. Now from here, the sky's the limit, thanks to Brewtools' long list of accessories, but I'll give you a couple more ideas to get your wheels spinning. This right here is essentially an all stainless steel version of the pressure kit. Again, you have a pressure gauge, spunding valve, pressure release valve, gas in ball lock, and liquid out ball lock, but this time it's made of stainless steel. Personally, I'd rather use a butterfly valve on the front of the tank to transfer beer out, so let me show you another option that doesn't use the floating dip tube. Now I have a full-size spunding valve, and I added a safety valve in place of the liquid out. Both of the setups I just showed you revolve around this 6-way valve, but that's not the only way to get this done. Another option is to use some 3-way valves and elbows that are a bit more versatile in the brewery. So this setup is pretty similar to the last two, but it doesn't use that 6-way valve. Like I said, the sky's the limit here, but make sure you're thinking about safety while you're fermenting under pressure. A safety valve is always a good idea. Now, moving down the tank, there are two 1.5-inch tri-clamp ports. The simplest way to go is to just cap these off and use something like the pressure kit to pull beer from the tank, but if we're talking accessories, the first thing to consider is a thermo well. This is, after all, a jacketed tank, and you'll need a thermo well to get an accurate temperature reading for your glycol system or fermentation chamber if you're still working your way up to that. Another great add is a dip tube and butterfly valve, which will allow you to transfer beer from the tank. Again, the sky's the limit here, and one way you can maximize these two ports is using 3 ways. In this case, I have a thermo well and a sampling valve all rigged up to use one single port. You could use this same method to add whatever else you want, like maybe a carb stone, or even connect a sight glass to the top of the tank to monitor the volume of the tank. Now, let's move down to the last port, a 2-inch tri-clamp on the bottom of the tank. You can start with this one capped as well, and when you're ready to add accessories, one thing to consider is the Brewtools heating element. This thing will help you raise your fermentation temperature above room temperature for diacetyl rests and yeast that like it hot. And to make cleaning a little easier, I would also consider adding one of these 2-inch tees and a ball valve. That way you can still perform a CIP cycle, but keep in mind, I don't think you'll be able to effectively dump yeast and trub with that little of clearance. Still, a great setup when you need a heat source. When you don't need a heat source, I'd go with something like this, a 2-inch elbow and butterfly valve. This setup makes it just like a traditional unitank. Okay, now that I've shown you all the options, let me show you how I'm setting this up for its maiden voyage. On the bottom of the tank, I have that traditional setup with an elbow and butterfly valve, and I'm going this route so I can dump trub and yeast from the tank and also run a CIP cycle. On the next port, I have a butterfly valve, and I intend to use this with the inline filter system when packaging finished beer in kegs or cans. Above that, I have a thermo well and sampling port. You might think I wouldn't get a good temperature reading with this, but it actually has plenty of penetration into the tank and should work pretty well. And on the top of the tank, I went super over the top. I'm adapting from 4 inches to 3 inches so I can use the same size butterfly valve that I use on my other tank. The benefit of that is the tanks can share the same hop drop kit. Above that valve is a pressure rig similar to the ones I showed you before. I have a safety valve, PRV, gas in, spunding valve, and pressure gauge. Now this is a pretty extreme setup, but that's what I love about the MiniUni lineup. You can start small with just a really nice stainless steel fermenter and build it out as you grow in the hobby to make it exactly what you need it to be. These two tanks will perform very, very similarly, yet the MiniUni Plus is less than half the cost, even if you include all these accessories. I'm actually wondering if it will perform even better than the F40 because the jacket seems to cover a larger surface area of the tank. Since the jacket extends so far down the tank, I think this one's going to work very well for smaller batches that wouldn't quite reach the height of the jacket on the F40. If you're following the Shed Brewery build, here's a quick update on the to-do list. Now that the fermenters are in place, I can turn my attention to temperature control. I also need to work on the kegerator, figure out my packaging situation, fix my water issues, including sparge water, cleaning water, and condenser water, add some kind of floor drain, and then I'm sure there will be some finishing touches like cutting hoses, maybe some lighting, and anything else I can think of. If you have any suggestions or thoughts on the MiniUni Plus, let me know in the comments. My name's Dan, this is Hops and Gnarly. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you again soon.